from Sunnyroad Optometrist. We've prepared a little video for you to watch with information on exactly what a full visual examination is, so you can understand better what we're going to be doing and evaluating in your child's visual system so that we can help them the best we can. Please watch the following videos and hopefully by the end of them you will have a lot more information.
When someone goes for an eye test, obviously one of the most important things that need to be assessed is the clarity of vision. This means, can a person see clearly? This is generally tested only at distance, which is an important factor, but what is much more important is assessing the whole visual system and how the eyes work together as a team in getting information in from what you're seeing. Things like tracking, accommodation, convergence are very important things to assess, because when a person is reading, those different aspects need to be working in order to get a nice clear image into your brain. 3D vision you can only get if you've got the other things in place, and your memory and perception ability needs to be able to be working towards reading in order to get a nice comfortable reading, which is the final top of the pyramid. Even though optometry in general should be checking on all these areas, it has become a standard that in traditional optometry often only the clarity of vision is checked. What's much more important is what has come to be called the behavioral optometry, although this is actually what anyone should be doing anyway in an eye test, where all parts of the visual system are investigated so that we can understand exactly what is happening when someone is reading and what sort of clarity and combination of words is getting into the brain. There's an accommodative system in the eye, meaning that there's a lens that focuses and relaxes focus. If someone wants to read, you have to be able to flex that lens and focus it in order to see clearly at near. When you want to see at distance, that same lens has to be relaxed. This means that if, for example, someone is looking from near to far and back again, such as copying from the board, the lens in the eye has to easily and quickly be able to focus for near vision and relax for distance vision. A very common problem is that even though that lens is extremely strong, it can focus a full amount of about 10 diopters, that initial lag of focusing and relaxing focus is difficult. Often board copying can be more of an issue than it should be, as it takes a while for the child to see things clearly both at distance and at near. This is the easiest area to fix, as a simple pair of glasses can solve this. If glasses are suggested, the reason would be that the glasses is a slightly focused shape. This means that when someone is reading with glasses on, with reading glasses on, that the slightly focused shape makes it easier to read at near without the lens having to accommodate to that amount. If that person would then look above the glasses at the board, they would just be using their normal eyes with a normal relaxed lens in order to see that. This would make it a lot easier to copy, where instead of the lens having to change its flexibility, it can stay in a normal relaxed position. If glasses are given for this reason, it's generally a temporary solution, as it just helps ease the change in focus process, and it does not make the eyes worse. The muscle is already very strong. The problem is that the muscle is working too hard. The glasses allow the muscle not to work as hard while the rest of the reading process is improved. As soon as it's better, the glasses are not necessary anymore, and that muscle will not have been affected negatively. When we consider reading, there are many factors that can contribute to difficulty with reading. Some of them are because of problems with eye movements, others are for other reasons. If we look at this picture, one of the first areas that we look at is eye tracking. If the eyes are not moving nicely and smoothly from one target to another, then whatever gets into the brain is garbled. We'll explain this in a little more detail when we explain the Visograph recording. Convergence is important, as it means that both eyes are looking inwards and both eyes are looking at the same text that is being observed. For example, if one eye looks to the one side and the other to the other side, the brain will get two different images. If convergence is not easy and simple, then reading is more difficult. This is a nice illustration of what convergence problems cause, where, for example, in this case, the right eye is focused on the word mat and the left eye is focused on the word cat. This makes it a little confusing for the brain, as it's not sure which word is right in front of it. However, when the eyes are both converged at the same word, the brain knows that the word sat is being seen and there is no duplication of different words. Accommodation is the focusing that we've just discussed, where it's very important to be able to focus on what you are trying to read. Once information gets into the brain in a nice clear order from the eyes, it then needs to be processed, and memory and perception are used as well to improve the reading ability. This is almost a separate area, even though we do work on improving this as well in vision therapy, as will be discussed later. What we see here is what the result of the Visograph assessment is. Once the eye tracking of the patient is recorded, it is shown in a video format so that it is quite obvious to the observer exactly how the eyes are moving. Over here is the passage that was read by the patient. The red mark that moves from side to side is showing us the position where the eyes are landing. As you will see, the eyes are moving from side to side in different directions and not as you would expect them to read if you were simply reading a passage. You can see that the part that's highlighted where it says penguins can remain, because the eyes are landing at different times, for example, at can, then remain, then penguins, what gets into the brain, into the memory, is jumbled. The person then, before they can understand that penguins can remain, has to work out all the different permutations, get it in the right order, and only then can they start to process. This is one example of how eye movements and tracking issues can make it a lot harder to comprehend what is reading, because the brain power has to be used to interpret it instead of the brain power needing to be used to interpret what's being read. The brain power can rather be used to comprehend it and work out what the main meaning of it is. When reading, we've got a certain amount of energy to spend while we're doing it. If we spend 80% of our energy simply on getting the information in, because our tracking, accommodation, convergence, memory, and perception are weak, you've not got very much energy left for reading comprehension. If, however, your skills are well developed, you are not having to use much energy in getting a nice clear image due to the tracking, accommodation, convergence, memory, and perception, and you're able to use a lot more of your energy on the reading and comprehension parts. The first step in working out if the visual issues are affecting reading is diagnosis. Part of the assessment, we do the Visograph assessment, which shows us exactly what is happening with the tracking and how the eyes are working, which will help us understand how much extra energy is being needed to ungarble that information. Binocular testing indicates exactly how the eyes are working together as a team and what resources are needed to be used to get things in clearly. If the skills are there and easy, then it's a lot easier to get into the brain. What we can do about it is we can start vision therapy. What vision therapy does is works on the baseline visual skills that are not right, that foundation that is wobbly, in order to improve those skills, such as convergence, accommodation, 3D. We also work more directly on the reading, where we try and improve reading fluency simply by practice. We find that once there are enough basics, as long as the reading's practiced nicely, everything improves. The final step would be reevaluation to see if we are on the right track. If things have not improved drastically, there may be other learning issues that need to be addressed. But hopefully at the reevaluation level, we find that there has been a nice improvement in skills. What you're seeing at the moment is a special Visograph. This is what we use to assess eye movements accurately and scientifically. The sensors on the inside measure exactly how the eyes move so that the computer can analyze it and show us accurately exactly how someone's eyes move while they read. What follows is a more detailed explanation of exactly how the Visograph works. We will be showing what a simulation is and how it indicates how the patient's eyes move while they read. There are also some graphs that get created by the Visograph, which will be explained. The reason this is important is that when I explain to you exactly how your child's eyes work, it will be easier to understand what the findings are. This is an example of a Visograph simulation where you can see again exactly where the eyes are pointing and where they're landing. Simulation of the video on the left is a child before they've done vision therapy. So you can see that there's quite a lot of up and down, back and forth movements where the eyes are not landing exactly where they should. Now the video is starting to play on the other side of the screen on the right hand side, and we are simultaneously playing the original video on the left hand side so you can see the difference. Now you will still see on the right hand side that there are still issues. This child is still not perfect, but you can see that it is much smoother, how the eyes are going much better from one word to another in a horizontal direction. So what the issues that we look for is when, for example, where it says pony and then the child goes straight down to man, where they're not quite sure if they'll actually reach where they would like to. Now, if we're looking on the right-hand side, there's still that kind of regression, but it's a lot smoother and they are actually jumping from one word to the next. This is just an example of how we can use the Visograph to track issues and to track progress as well. In this, again, we can see a graph that is drawn that comes out of that exact simulation that we saw. What we are looking for is a step sort of shape graph. As you can see on the right-hand side, each eye is shown by a different line, and the more step-like and smooth, as well as the wider the steps, the better the ability that the child has to read. If we look on the graph on the left, this is a much less skilled graph, meaning the jumps are much smaller, as well as some of them going backwards and forwards. If we look at someone who is a skilled reader, they would not be reading like this. This is the sort of graph that we'll be showing you after your child's examination today, provided we do a Visograph examination, and it will be quite visual exactly where the issues are and what is happening when your child is reading.
Your child may see 20/20 but still have a vision problem, a condition that's gone undiagnosed or misdiagnosed, a condition that's affecting his or her learning. But vision therapy can help. NJN News Health and Medical correspondent Sarah Lee Kessler takes us in for a closer look.
Can you read those letters to me?
A-G-D-L. 9-year-old Lindsay Warwick has no problem deciphering the letters when they appear one by one during a vision test. But like other children with eye tracking, scanning, or convergence issues, reading can be difficult if the eyes don't work together properly.
We call that a binocular or an eye teaming problem. And these type of problems will cause children to see things double, go in and out of focus, and that's a very common problem.
Dr. Barry Tannen, a behavioral optometrist in Trenton, says 10 million American children have vision problems that affect their learning, problems that are often misdiagnosed and misunderstood.
When you have a lot of difficulty reading or doing near work, oftentimes you're going to get distracted, and that distraction can easily be confused for an attention problem.
12-year-old Cole Alexis was a case in point.
And we finally had him tested, and that's when we realized it wasn't ADD or ADHD, but it was actually vision problems.
Sometimes they're hard to differentiate. However, what we find is that children who have true ADHD or ADD have attention problems for all types of tasks, whereas children who have vision-related learning problems often will only have attention issues when they're doing things like reading or writing or studying, and yet they could sit quietly and listen to somebody read to them and repeat everything back to what was read. So that's one of the ways that we can tell a difference.
Junie B. Jones. The B stands for Brecca.
Jada Jones is an avid reader, even though it sometimes gives her a headache, even though reading has long been a struggle.
Sometimes I can't really see things that I was supposed to see.
When she started saying, I'm not a very good reader, is when we, started feeling really bad. We could see that her self-esteem was taking a hit.
The difficulty surfaced in kindergarten and didn't improve until years later when Jada met with a developmental optometrist.
It creates a lot of eye strain, fatigue, tension, headaches, and these children will have very little or no reading comprehension.
Dr. Michael Kotlicki quickly diagnosed the eye tracking problem, convergence insufficiency.
The brain hasn't learned the timing and motor coordination skills it takes to converge, maintain the convergence, start tracking across the page like a printer or a typewriter for extended periods of time.
Jada's mom says one of the doctor's first questions was, did her daughter walk early? She did.
A lot of babies that start actually walking fast actually get this convergence insufficiency because the hand coordination that babies do while they're crawling is stopped.
Follow me.
Fortunately, there is a cure. Since April, Jada has been undergoing visual therapy sessions.
Her confidence has improved tremendously since then. She still loves to read.
She is very beautiful.
So for that, I'm very grateful.
I practice my numbers at home, too.
Do you practice your numbers at home? Do you practice every night?
Like so many other children and adults, this little girl sees numbers and letters clearly, but from a different perspective. Up until recently, many of these people have been diagnosed as slow learners. But a local doctor says his research shows many of these problems are related to vision.
The key is not only to do the diagnostic. What are we going to do about it after we find out someone has a problem? We can work with it. We've shown in the research that we will have a dramatic effect on how responsive an individual will be to reading and learning.
These vision problems are different from dyslexia because dyslexia is a learning disability. Here we're talking about problems interpreting or understanding what people see. The results of this special vision skill training has changed Patty Ann Curran's attitude towards school and herself, according to her mother.
We're back to having the child that we used to have, who was cheerful and easy to get along with and who liked herself.
How's she doing in school now, as opposed to before?
It's been a marked improvement.
What makes these vision problems all the more frustrating is most of these people have normal or above normal IQs and are easily misdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all. Betsy Curran is a good example. She accidentally discovered she had the same vision problem her daughter has when she could not complete the child's exercises, and now Mom is undergoing treatment too. Here are just a few warning signs to look for.
The primary characteristics I would look for with children are reversals, where they read was as saw, a short attention span, the inability to concentrate visually. In the reading process, if an individual loses their place, or if they skip lines, or they reread words. Another symptom that occurs very frequently are headaches.
In think that children will grow out of the problem. For example, seeing 24 is 42, or putting shoes on the wrong feet, but they won't. They just start compensating for their vision deficiency.
You know, having 20/20 eyesight is no indication that everything's well. It's like having 98.6 temperature and being quite sick. So 20/20 eyesight is really, being perfect vision is a myth, and we need to look at that more deeply because children with 20/20 eyesight often have visual issues that interfere with learning. Most of what we learn in the classroom occurs visually. We're visual beings. Most of our brain is dedicated to vision, and it's not just seeing small things far away. It's actually scanning and converging and focusing on written material that enables us to learn. Well, convergence insufficiency is the inability for the eyes to turn inward in an efficient manner to then have both eyes point at the book that you're reading from, or math homework that you're doing, or anything like that. And one of the symptoms of not being able to turn your eyes in and sustain that in an efficient way is the behavior of taking a long time to get your homework done, for example, the homework wars that a lot of parents have to deal with, or inattention or poor endurance, physical symptoms such as headaches, blurred vision, double vision. This is a situation that you can't see. It's the eyes are actually stuttering when they're trying to read.
And hold that up, yeah, for that camera.
So this is what it looks like normally for a normal print, and that looks just how we would all see print. Now, for children with learning difficulties that are secondary to visual issues, such as tracking, it's going to look something like this. And this is very devastating. Wow. And when somebody tries to read something like this, it's pretty difficult to, regardless of how intelligent you are or how well you can decode written language, if your eye movements aren't sufficient, then this is what it's going to look like to you.
And you know, so tough for the kid at, you know, at a critical time when, you know, they're trying to learn, they're in whatever, 3rd, 4th, 5th grade. Oh, yeah. And they need to pick up on, you know, the 3 R's. Right. And they're not getting reading at all.
No, they're not. And this is a joyous time of the season for most of us. And but for kids that have learning disabilities and children that have visual issues that are really misunderstood, or they might be misdiagnosed as having dyslexia or ADHD, when in fact they might have an underlying visual problem, it's pretty hard for them.
And it's often misdiagnosed, you say, by say, the teachers in school or school administrators. But optometrists, if you take your kid to an optometrist, they know exactly what's going on. They're going to test for it.
Well, that's right. That's why the California Optometric Association is dedicated to having parents understand this critical relationship between vision and learning, and it has to do with near-point testing. And if you don't do that near-point testing, you don't know whether or not a child's truly prepared to learn. Well, they need to be tested visually. That's right. They need to be tested from the eyes all the way back into the brain. That is visual motility, that is eye movement control, focusing and convergence, then visual perception, and then visual information processing.
And the warning signs for parents, what do parents need to look out for?
The warning signs are your children's behavior, because the visual system is mute. the visual system can't speak for you. So they avoid schoolwork, for example. They take too long to do their homework. Physical symptoms like headaches and eye pain. They're sitting too close to the television. They squint to see in the distance. They avoid homework.
And poor hand-eye coordination. So if they're not maybe good with sports, is that an indication potentially too?
Absolutely, because the visual system guides the intelligent movement of the body.
Okay.
And if the eyes can't do that very well, then it looks as though that child's clumsy or inefficient with their muscles and their motor skills.
So it's important to have near-point vision testing.
That's the key.
Dr. Thaw also says she's seeing an increase of nearsightedness in children and recommends kids take breaks from video games, TVs, computer use, and handheld devices, a break of 20 seconds for every 20 minutes of use.